I'm joined today by author, entrepreneur, and the founder of Little Bird People Development, Alison Delaney. Alison, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I want to talk to you about a lot of things today because I know that you've got tremendous expertise in the education space, in people development, but you've also got a very interesting background. Talk to me about that.
Well, I'm fostered and adopted, and that happened in 1971. So if you imagine what it was like back then, Davis, it was very different in relation to being adopted to a white family. So we didn't see the mix and the amalgamation of diversity that we see today. It was very much a different network and experience for people around us. So as much as I was blessed to be adopted and I've had a wonderful life with my adoptive family, it brought its challenges along the way, as you would imagine and expect. And we lived predominantly in a white area, so I didn't see children that looked like me.
And I think I saw in your story as well that, all through school, you were the only black kid in
The
school.
only black kid in school.
And
So
and what did that do to you growing up from a character development standpoint? Because I imagine it must have been quite challenging. You must have dealt with some challenges. And how has that built up you as a person from a character perspective?
Well, my mum was an educator all of her life. She's still with us, thank goodness. But for her whole life, she was an educator. So inside the home, I was very much brought up to believe in your unique qualities, your self-belief and the ability to achieve anything that you put your mind to. So the environment was very loving. And as much as I was a black child in a white family, that didn't play a major role in my upbringing until later on. Outside of the family, of course, being the only black kid, there was a lot of curiosity. People hadn't seen black children, as crazy as that sounds today. It was just the case in the 70s. So there'd be lots of questions and advances that would be inappropriate, like touching my hair or, rubbing my skin to see if the colour would come off. So as a young child growing up in that environment where you could see that wasn't happening to your counterparts, of course it rose challenges and questions. But because we had such a loving environment at home and my mum was an educator, she was able to steer me in a really effective way through that part of my journey.
That is quite interesting, and it goes again to show the importance of having very supportive and understanding parents, particularly when the parents take the time to instill the confidence in you as a kid. And you've since gone on to have this remarkable career, which is then culminated in you founding, Little Bird People Development. First of all, tell me the inspiration behind the name.
The name. So as I was growing up, my mum always said I was intrigued by birds. And I'd ask her the question, where have they been? What would they tell us if they could speak? And so that's always been a trait of mine. I liked the fact that they were free and they could go anywhere and they didn't answer to anyone, which is kind of how I live my life now as well, Dave, if I'm honest. But through my life, birds have always played a strong element of sort of my focus and my drive. So when I was around sort of 14, a really inspirational book that I came across was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, which was incredibly impactful at that time of my life as well. And then when I was pregnant, a robin would land in my garden pretty much every day. And so my daughter is called Robin. And so my business is my legacy to my daughter, hence it being Little Bird.
Fantastic. What a remarkable story behind the name. Now let's talk about the business itself. What does the company do?
So Little Bird People Development essentially focuses on change management and particularly around cultural and behavioural change. So anything to do with soft skills development, values alignment, bringing a brand to life through demonstrating the values, which means the customer experiences what the client is actually trying to drive forward, is where we get involved. So we support businesses with really identifying what their values are, understanding how they translate into behaviours, and therefore how their team and themselves can demonstrate them to really maximise on their business opportunities.
That is quite remarkable, particularly at this times when businesses are facing so many challenges, besides the challenges happening in the external environment, you've got rapid changes in technology, you've got changes in, staff, there's high staff turnover considering all that's happening in the economy. How are businesses dealing with that change that is happening at the macro level but having a massive impact on the business?
There's very much an understanding now that people really are the biggest asset that you have. Where we'd used the language previously, the investment wasn't necessarily reflective of the statement. Whereas now, we're getting the ethos of quiet quitting, which is absolutely about staff engagement and them not feeling valued or heard, or that they're really being given the best opportunities in their employment. And of course, what they're doing is saying, well, I control that now, and they'll go. And so organisations now recognise it's no longer the employee being grateful for the job. They have to step up and create an opportunity that the employee
value stream
needs. And so it's more of a partnership than an employee-employer environment now.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that change happen all across board, and it's quite remarkable as well how, employee-related issues and matters have sort of dominated conversations around the business space, and rightfully so. And we're grateful that that is happening because it's drawn a lot of attention to the issues that, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we weren't paying attention to, but were really, really affecting people. It's quite remarkable as well that that has come to the fore. The other question I want to ask you, though, is on the employee side. So considering all that's happened and the new normal, as we like to call it, what changes have you seen in terms of how people work and how people control their own personal development as employees?
Yeah, so there's definitely been a focus on owning your personal development, but also your well-being and mental health. And of course, the hybrid working now from home and in offices, or globally, however you are set up as a business, is essential that the individuals own their space and they are accountable, they take ownership and understand the elements that they play to the profitability of an organisation. Now, again, previously we would see heavy levels of parent-child ego states in organisations, so employees waiting for permission, seeking out elements of building their confidence rather than just moving forward and being proactive and bringing the skills to the table that we know they have, and that's really where we work. So we work very much in adult ego states. You own your life outside of a work environment. So we want you to bring those skills and that confidence into the workplace.
It's a different way of working.
It's a different way of working. It really is. And they, what we see is people prefer that way of working because you're treated like an adult. Everybody wants that. But equally, you have a greater control of your outcome, your career prospects when you own that. So an example would be, the out-of-date performance management where, typically an employee would turn up and the manager would tell them their objectives and they'd agree. They'd go in a drawer until another 6 months, and they haven't necessarily discussed them. It's gone, it's out of date. This is where the individual can really take control. What is it that you want from your career in this organisation? Shape it. Go to them and talk about it, but also understand you have to invest in that. Absolutely. It's not just going to be given to you.
Absolutely. And on the employer side, because we're talking about investment, for, small, medium-sized companies that are thinking, yes, I've got to invest in people. On the one hand, entrepreneurs think I've got to invest in people to help retention and because it's just a better way of doing things. But on the flip side, they think, but what if they leave? How should employers navigate that two-sided conversation in their minds around, yes, I need to give my all into my people, commit resources to them, invest in them, help them develop, but also, you can hold on too tightly because, how do you navigate those two things?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of ways of looking at that, aren't there? Keep your people, don't invest in them. But actually, what's the impact on your business with underskilled and underdeveloped individuals? Or invest in them and create an environment where they want to stay and they will thrive and be far more productive for your organisation. And all of our businesses now are looking at culture. Actually, what does it mean to be inclusive? What Absolutely. Does it mean for people to want to come and work with us, stay with us, and be a part of the journey and drive it rather than being a passenger?
Absolutely.
And so in those spaces, we're seeing great growth and real engagement with businesses.
Which actually is the way it should be. And you mentioned inclusive just there, and I want to touch on, just before we move on, touch on the conversation around managing diversity, because there's been a lot of conversation around diversity in the workplace, whether it be diversity around, you know, race, gender, or even, you know, having employees come from different locations. You know, you've got people that are local in your city where the business is domiciled, and then you've got people that are working from abroad, you know, with all the different modes of working that we've got today. As businesses, how are you helping your clients to manage all of that complexity?
Well, the first thing is them really getting their heads around what it even means for them. You know, diversity for one business is going to be very different for the next. And so what we tend to focus on more is inclusivity. That, you know, if you're inclusive, then diversity plays a part in that. Otherwise, you're not inclusive, right?
Sure.
So it's easier for a business, we found, for them to look at, well, if we're inclusive, all of these diverse aspects will be focused on.
Definitely.
And, you know, regardless of where people work now, hybrid working is a real thing. COVID's proven that. It's proven that we can still be as productive regardless of where we are. So that presenteeism has gone, and it's more about building the trust. And that's where we come back to the adult relationships.
Fantastic. I think the work that you do is remarkable because it's the right time to do it. The world is changing, work culture is changing, and organizations have better catch up because otherwise they're going to be left behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And with your company as well, I know that you've got some interest in education. So it's not just people development at the corporate level.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you do around the education space.
So when we were working with adults, and we do a lot of values-based executive coaching, the trend and the pattern that inevitably comes up is the limiting beliefs were embedded in childhood. Okay, and so what I recognised is I need to be giving our younger population some skills, some kind of insights to help them navigate into the world of work. And so that's when we started to explore education. Initially, it started working with teachers around growth mindset and language and how that can influence and impact on our children and their confidence, because a lot of these coaching conversations were around things that were said, you know, in school.
Absolutely.
And so helping teachers to understand that impact has been really beneficial. But whilst working in that space, it was really apparent that the children were showing an interest as well. And I'm talking primary school here.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, let me see whether or not what we do actually translates to primary school children. And absolutely it did. And, you know, we started working with primary schools and teachers around aspirations, you know, building self-belief and confidence and resilience, and more recently around financial well-being as well, because we know the impact that, you know, financial wealth has. And so Little Chicks Life Lessons, which is what our education programme is called, was established back in sort of 2016 and has been growing, you know, organically initially, but over the last 2 years has really sort of taken
I think I saw
off.
somewhere that you've supported about 12,000 kids.
Yes.
Wow.
To date, 31 schools, approximately 30,000 books have been delivered in those schools. And one of the things I was really passionate about, because I was a big reader as a child, because that's where I could escape, right? That's where I could be whoever I wanted to be. And I know how valuable that was for me as a child. And I was horrified to understand that less than 1 in 5 children own a book of their own at home, which became really evident when COVID hit and we saw the literacy abilities drop because they didn't have the resources. So Little Chicks Life Lessons provides 3 books for children. So every child gets these books.
Are
along
these books
with
that you offered?
Yes, so I've written these books. And initially it was just a way of ensuring that the child could hold on to the lessons that we'd been going through with them in the workshops. But as we've grown, we've recognised actually this is a really integral part of the programme. And so there's 3 books. The first book is Little Chick Has Lunch on the Moon, which is about dreams and aspirations. The second book is Little Chick Finds His First Best Friend, which is about learning who we are as unique individuals and what friendship means. And the third book is Little Chick's Nest Egg, which is about financial well-being, learning how to save.
Interesting. Based on this thing you said, I think maybe even some adults should go read.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. It's quite a remarkable thing there. And where are the schools located that you work with?
So the schools are national, but the majority of them are in the West Midlands. And the wonderful thing about the programme is that it's supported by corporate sponsorships. So when we think about ESG agendas, so environment, social, governance that organisations are now having to be able to validate how they're giving back to the community and supporting sort of the economy in that way. It's a great way for them to be able to support their local communities with education and children, but also building that pipeline. So, you know, we talk a lot about the skills gap. And when we talk about the skills gap, our default tends to be university students and college students.
Absolutely.
Well, actually, we need to be building that pipeline a lot earlier. It's a short-term view. And so with the Little Chicks Life Lessons programme, what we're starting to do is already build those skills and lessons, life lessons for our children. But because the organisation sponsor them, they can get involved.
Absolutely.
So they can come in and they can start talking to the children about the roles that they have in their own businesses. The children can see how to get from A to B.
And even understand all those different roles and professions and career channels.
Absolutely. So, you know, you're building your pipeline from classroom to boardroom. And when we think about the skills gap, you're only talking sort of 7 years. If you think about primary school. And so, you know, that comes around like that, as we know. So forward planning, effective strategic planning is really important. And
Fantastic.
so we're really looking for more organisations to get involved with sponsorships and, you know, really help to demonstrate that social impact.
And on that note, I want you to lean more as well into you know, your next step as a company, the next set of aspirations. What are you looking to accomplish?
So this year, because it's 2023, we want to impact an additional 20,023 individuals across our schools.
Fantastic goal.
And we have 25 primary schools on our waiting list, and that waiting list is building all of the time, predominantly in the West Midlands. So, you know, if businesses are looking to support in their local area, they can definitely get in touch with us and we can make that happen. After 2023, so from 2024, over the next 5 years, we want to impact 250,000 individuals globally. So we already touch base in South Africa. There's a number of schools that we've supported there, but we want to grow that network and really have the children understand on a much bigger scale how they impact the world, not just their local areas.
Fantastic. These are very, very important goals because the more people we reach, the more this impact message is delivered, and the more we see the knock-on effect of those things on our economy, generally speaking.
Absolutely.
This is a lot that you do. What inspires you? What drives you?
So I have a daughter, Robin, and I have a granddaughter, Amelia. And now Amelia's 5 years old. She loves Little Chick. She loves all of the characters in the books. She was thrilled that I was going to be talking about Little Chick today.
Awesome.
And, you know, the stories are much bigger than, you know, an illustrated picture book, which are beautiful. My illustrator, Stu Perry, is incredible. But they're much bigger than that. They are life lessons. They are about how we support the next generation to thrive and what's possible. And so every day when I wake up and I see my daughter and I see my granddaughter, ultimately that's my driver because I'm trying to create a better opportunity for them when I'm not here. They are my legacy and they deserve a great legacy to continue to drive forward.
They definitely do deserve that, and what a fantastic legacy it is that you've built. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Davies. It's been great.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And we've got Safaraz Ali coming up. Carl is going to be speaking to him and talking about some very interesting stuff. So don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.